To the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce Business Breakfast Series. My name is Michelle Joler-Labby. I am the VP of HR and Diversity at Thomas College and the chair of the board for the Mid-Maine Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure to welcome you all here today. Before we begin our program this morning, I would like to take a moment to thank our 2024 Business Breakfast Series sponsors, AT&T, Cross Insurance, New Dimensions Federal Credit Union, Nicholson, Mishu, and Nadeau, CPAs, O'Donnell Lee, PA, Sheridan Construction, the Morning Sentinel, our print media sponsor, 107.9 The Mix, our radio sponsor, Kennebec Savings Bank, our video sponsor. Thanks to our additional sponsor for this morning's breakfast, the Frame Makers. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phone in consideration of our guests, and please don't forget to complete the evaluation forms that are on the table. We hope you are able to visit our today's breakfast spotlighters, Cara Maloney of Best Buddies International and Danielle Hughes of Maine Savings Federal Credit Union. Please welcome our new chamber members, Bridget Campbell, Consulting and Design, Maine Rail Group, Mitchell Fundraising, PJM Property Management, LLC, New Beginnings 2. I would also like to inform you of our upcoming events. We invite you to attend any and all of our upcoming events. Our next business after hours will be held at TD Bank, 182 Main Street, Waterville, on February 28th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. Join us for Meet the Reps event on Thursday, March 7th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at the Hampton Inn, 425 Kennedy Memorial Drive, Waterville. Take this opportunity to interact with local and state representatives. The next business breakfast will be held on Thursday, March 14th. Our presentation will be the AI phenomenon, its advantages and cautions. Director of the Colby College Davis Institute for Artificial Intelligence, Dr. Amanda Stent, will speak on the courses offered relative to this present-day development. She will share the benefits of using AI in businesses and some of the challenges given the growing AI proliferation. Breakfasts are held right here from 7:15 to 9 a.m. To register, simply email cindy@midmainechamber.com or call the chamber office. Save the date for our awards dinner, which will be held at the Waterville Elks Banquet Center on Thursday, April 25th from 5 to 8 p.m., honoring 9 of the area's finest in a red carpet event format. Advanced registrations may be forwarded to cindy@midmainechamber.com. Please indicate the number of spaces requested and if you have a preference of seating near one of the awardees' tables. No physical tickets are supplied. For the slate of winners for this year's event, please visit our website, www.midmainechamber.com/annual awards. There was a typo here. Mark your calendars for our Business to Business Showcase to be held on Tuesday, May 21st at Thomas College from noon to 6 p.m. Registration materials will go out shortly. For more information, contact Cindy at the Chamber. Today's panel is a part 2 discussion of what can be done in our communities and in our workplaces to embrace DEI. Each of our 3 panelists will speak for approximately 15 minutes. There will be time provided for Q&A following all of the presentations. When you are asking questions, please wait until we get a microphone to you so that your question will be captured on our video. It is now my pleasure to introduce our 3 panelists. I will start with Ella. Ella Bowman was recently hired in October of 2023 as Winslow's town manager. Prior to this, she worked for the town of Oakland for over 24 years, with 9 of those years as Oakland's town manager. Before being hired as Oakland's town manager, she served as a police officer for the town for 15 years, a role that she states helped her develop the necessary relationships to succeed as a town manager. With more than a quarter of a century of public service between both towns and one of the first members of the Kennebec Valley Diversity Coalition, she knows how much value DEI holds for our region. Over the past 3 years, Winslow, Oakland, Waterville, and Fairfield, as well as over a dozen other municipalities, businesses, and nonprofits, adopted a diversity resolution pledging to initiate changes and challenges to make our communities more welcoming and inclusive. In July of 2021, and at the age of 61, Ella Bowman came out publicly as a transgender woman. While living her life as her true self, she continues to be a community and municipal leader. Ella continues her work helping others understand the real-life struggles and complexities of diversity, both in our personal lives as well as our work lives. In April of 2023, Ella was named the Mid-Maine Chamber's Municipal Employee of the Year for 2022. In April of 2021, Ella, on behalf of the town of Oakland, received Mid-Maine Chamber's Community Service Project of the Year for the many revitalization projects that she spearheaded over her career in Oakland. In 2010, she was named Police Officer of the Year. In 2009, she was awarded the Oakland Police Department's Unsung Hero Award. And in 2003, Ella was again recognized as Oakland's Police Officer of the Year. Ella has a history of leadership positions, having owned a local business for a 10-year span, as well as working in her first career as a leader for a large out-of-state lumber company. Ella holds 2 degrees in forestry and sits on many regional boards. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ella. Next up, we have Karen Morin. She is the Career Success Navigator for Kennebec County. Karen has extensive experience working with diverse populations. Her background is in social services, working with new Mainers, soldiers, veterans, and people who just need a bit of support to recognize that they are resilient. She assists people in looking for jobs, starting the process, and those that just don't know where to begin. Her goal is to foster a trusting relationship that supports people through their journey from resume building, interviewing, and searching for the right job fit. Her career has included working in the state psychiatric facility as a crisis worker, the manager of behavioral health services and correctional services for 2 county jails, working for the Maine National Guard as the risk reduction manager, and now for the Department of Education. She grew up in Fairfield, Maine, attending Lawrence High and then the University of Maine. She is a mom, grandmother, and caretaker of her mother who suffers from Alzheimer's. And she has the 4 most adorable little doggies. Please join me in welcoming Karen. Last up, we have Dr. Richard Biffle. He is currently a professor of education in anthropology at Thomas College. He teaches courses in education, history, cultural anthropology, archaeology, and STEAM. Dr. Biffle has lived and traveled around the world and has an extensive background and experience in the areas of social justice, civil and human rights, equity and diversity training, community organization and planning, teacher education, and multicultural education. In addition, he is a former elementary and middle school teacher and elementary school administrator. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Biffle. And at this point, I'm going to turn the mic over to Ella.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, everybody, for attending Chapter 2. They say the first movie is always better than the second movie. I'm hoping that we can keep this one going. And I'd also like to thank my colleagues, Karen and Dr. Biffle, for coming in and joining us today. I think that this is going to be a good program, and I think it's something that we all continue to need to talk about. This is an issue that's becoming more and more of a topic across the country. There's parts of our country that's trying to eliminate DEI, and we still have it alive up here in Maine. I think it's important. As Michelle said, my name is Ella Michaela Bowman. I'm an out transgender woman. My pronouns are she and her. In order to go and make a workspace inclusive and understanding, we have to understand the people who are working with us. I represent probably one of the most marginalized communities on the planet. Okay, 1 out of every 200 people born on this planet are born transgender. We don't know that. We didn't know that. Or you didn't know that. I'm sorry. I'm going to be a little lost here without my PowerPoint presentation. 1 out of every 200 people on this planet are born transgender. We have been abused, hidden, put into a box and not allowed to be ourselves for a long time. There has been a lot of education that's come forward over what goes on with us and what creates the situation. There's approximately 1.6 million transgender people across the country that are out. That 1.6 million people are not lying to us. When they tell you that their brain and their body do not match, they're being honest. And we need to understand that. So, working, I came out in the town of Oakland as a town manager. It was probably the biggest struggle I've ever had. It was a deal where I worked as an alpha male my entire work career. And for me to go to my staff and let them know that I'm transgender, and tomorrow when I come to work, I'm going to come to work as my true self, was a hard pill for people to swallow. It certainly was a struggle for a lot of the people in town who knew me as a police officer. It was a struggle for the staff that worked for me. And as things turned out, our jobs have expiration dates, and I moved on. The town of Winslow was looking for a town manager, and I ended up going to work for them. My staff in Winslow has been absolutely amazing. They're so supportive and almost protective to a certain degree. So it's been a good situation at this point in time.
Raider pride.
Raider pride. How many people in this room actually know somebody who's gay or lesbian? How many people in this room actually are related to somebody who's gay or lesbian? How many people in this room know somebody who's transgender without knowing me? How many people in this room are related to somebody who's transgender? As you can see, the numbers have dropped, okay? If you have a workspace that has over 200 people working for you, you have somebody working in that environment who's trans. That's the bottom line. They don't have the courage to raise their hand and come out. They don't have, and the reason for that is because when you're a transgender person, you know that you're going to lose your family when you transition. You absolutely know that you are most likely going to lose your jobs and become completely and totally unemployable. When that happens, you can't afford to live. You're going to lose your houses, and you're going to be living in a tent on Kennebec River in Waterville, Maine. That's the path that we all know we have in front of us. As human beings, we have to touch and feel or sense something to understand it. You do not have the capacity, you do not have the emotional or mental capacity to understand what it's like to be transgender, because your gender and your sex line up. You don't have the capacity. And an example of that, when we saw that horrific event on 9/11, when the World Trade Center got run into by these jets, and we saw people holding hands, jumping out of 100 floors, knowing that they're going to die. They know what it feels like to get burned. So instead of burning alive, they chose a path of death that they didn't understand. It's the same thing. We don't understand what it's like to have a different skin color. We don't know what it's like to be transgender or gay or lesbian. We have a workforce shortage in our state. We're experiencing it right here in the Waterville region. Diversity is marching in our direction. Culture is marching in our direction. We need to bring these people in. We need to accept who they are. We need to try to understand that their lifestyle might be a little different than ours. And they need 10 minutes. That means I have 5 minutes, Michelle, or do I have 10 minutes? I've got 10 minutes. Wow, this is going to be a long time. I can't believe that they screwed up and did not put my PowerPoint presentation. Talk about putting me in a bad spot. Where's Kim?
Vacation.
So, back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, they always tried to bring the brain to the body. They experimented on our transgender people by giving us frontal lobotomies, electric shock therapies, and even today, conversion therapy. It's happening even today. What they have found that by experimenting and torturing these human beings, the suicide rate never dropped. What they discovered, in order for us to live our life, is to bring the body to the brain. And this is expensive for us. I mean, the life that we live, the gender dysphoria that we deal with is so painful. You just can't understand what it's like. It's horrible. It's horrible stuff. So, you know, being transgender, there's multiple parts of this puzzle. And it depends on how much money you want to spend for you to actually look in the mirror and truly see who you are. We have facial feminization surgery, and I'm talking only as a transgender woman because I don't know what it's like to be a transgender male. We have gender confirmation surgery, which is the complete rebuild. We have hormone treatment that you're on for the rest of your life. But we're happy. There was a study across the country that just came out 2 days ago. They interviewed almost 100,000 out transgender people, and they found that 79% of those people, after they transitioned, lived a productive and happy life. That's all it takes. But boy, the loss is incredible. If you have a person in your workspace who comes out transgender, it's a shock, for one thing. I mean, it's something people love to gossip, and we're fearful of it. Human beings weren't born with claws. We weren't born with fangs. We were born with a really large brain. The first line of defense for brain is fear. Fight or flight. Kill it, run away from it, do whatever. And when we see somebody who's different, that's why we've talked about bias. How bias is hardwired in every one of us. It's been that way since the beginning of time. It keeps us alive, even today. So we're fighting nature when we're fighting with diversity. But we're smarter than the cats and the dogs. We're human beings. We have feelings. This march that's going on right now across our country, that's fighting against diversity, fighting against DEI, is wrong. It truly is wrong. Because, you know, we all have a place in this world. I like to refer to DEI as IED, improvised explosive device. If you don't have a solid DEI program in a larger company, it's going to be a financial landmine for your company. Because there's so many people out there that don't understand, and all it takes is conversations, it takes trainings, and it takes a really solid work harassment policy. There has to be teeth in what you do. So if you have an employee that comes out and the guys are out back and smoking and joking, well, Ella Bowman used to be Gary Bowman, you know, what is he, a man or a woman? That can't take place. Dead naming for a transgender person is horrible stuff. When people come up to me and call me Gary, it's earth-shattering to me because I never really have been Gary. And now that I finally have had the strength to be myself, I don't want to be dead named. And for somebody to come up to you and say, I miss Gary, or I miss that person, that actually can bring suicidal thoughts to somebody. Because all of this stress and all of these losses just to be yourself, to be whole, just like all of you, has not worked. Because now society is causing a problem. You know, it's funny because I've had a chance to live as myself for almost 3 years. And even though I don't have gender dysphoria anymore, I am dealing with the wrath of public opinion. What's worse, the gender dysphoria or the verbal abuse, possibly the physical abuse, possibly somebody trying to kill me if I'm out in a restaurant? My friend Lucy and I, we go out a lot right in the Waterville area, and a lot of people know who I am because unfortunately I've been in the paper a lot. You know, so they see me in a restaurant, they'll come up and say something to me. And, you know, it can be a risk. Fortunately, my reputation is such that I don't think that I'd have that problem unless I had some ding-a-ling out there that, you know, being a police officer and, you know, they better pack a lunch if they're going to hook on to me because it's not going to go good dressing up. Seriously. I know shit. So be kind to your coworkers. Have a solid harassment policy. Include them. Include them. That's the I in IED or DEI. Include them in your company. Treat them as equals. We have diversity all around us. One of my favorite saying is all of us are in the people business. People come in different shapes and sizes. People come in different colors. People come with different political and different religious beliefs. They come with different ages, different sexual orientations, and different gender identities. We need to understand that. We need to make our world a better place, and it starts in our businesses. It starts in our communities. As a community leader being out and transgender, I'm certainly sending a message. It's okay to be different. It's okay to look different. It's okay to sound different. It's all right. Thank you.
Good morning. My name again is Karen Morin, and when I was asked to do this, I had seen the first video of part one. It was my first day on the job, and I was like, Kim, how can you ask me to do this? These people, wow, blew my mind, and I kept thinking, what can I offer? What can I bring to this table? So a few sleepless nights and a few giggles, I thought, okay, I'm gonna dig deep and see what I've got. So first of all, I'm the daughter of immigrants. My parents came from Canada. I mean, right next door, and we don't often think of that. When my father got here, became American citizen, he was immediately drafted. So he went into the military, and he has said to me since day one, was the best experience of my life. And I thought, wow, that's pretty resilient. You come from another country and immediately you go into the military. My mother came here, became an American citizen, and she had to show up at the police station every 3 months. She had to have blood work. She had to prove who she was. So when I was raised in that family, I was raised with, you're going to have bias. You're going to have people that don't think like you do. you're female, you know, you're gonna have to do better. And so in that case, I'm gonna say first that bias worked for me. It made me stronger in a lot of ways because I had something to prove, and I wanted to make sure that I showed people what I was all about. So my experience in life with DEI, and I never realized it until a year or two ago, believe it or not, that my whole life has been about diversity. I don't have a lot of experience with racism. I did, when my father decided when he became an American citizen, he was going to go back to college and get another master's degree. So he uploaded all of us, and we ended up in Mississippi, which was quite unique. And we lived in the projects because we were very poor. And my first exposure to racism was there were whites, there were blacks in this project, and neither side thought that my parents should allow me to play with the other children. So that was my first experience. Of course, I was raised in a family that these things didn't matter, and you based people on, are they good people or bad people? And that's how I was raised, and that's how I continue to live my life. My background, very interesting, and I think it was because of my parents who encouraged me. You know, I reflect on Ella and Dr. Biffle's last year, and I thought, yep, I'm going to work with the hardest people to work with on the planet, and that's the chronically mentally ill. And I'm going to show my age by saying I worked at AmHi for 10 years. And I went through assaults, I went through all kinds of things, but it was incredibly rewarding because these were people who were vulnerable, and they needed help, and they needed understanding. From there, I decided, why not? I'll become a crisis worker, and I'll ride along with the police. I probably put myself into more chaotic situations, knives being held to me, you know, being held hostage for a little bit one time. Quite an interesting life. And then from there, I thought, why not go work in the correctional systems with the justice-involved people? So that's what I did. I worked in correctional facilities doing medical and mental health services, and I did that for 16 years. Not to be outdone, I said, wow, let me just check. How about the military? Because, you know, that's a population I haven't touched yet. So I went to work for the Maine National Guard, and I was their risk reduction manager. And what does that mean? I worked with soldiers on suicidal risk. I worked with substance use disordered people, and I did that for 8 years, and was very rewarding, incredibly rewarding. Again, here as I'm aging, I'm like, well, you know, I got a few good years left, and this job came up. And it was for the Department of Education, and working for the Hub 5. For those of you who don't know what the Hub 5 is, it's all the adult eds in Kennebec County. So I cover not only everybody in Kennebec County, but the hubs, which are in Maranacook, Winthrop, Gardner, Augusta, and Waterville. So all this in 30 hours a week. It's a lot of fun. So part of my job is working with people who are underemployed, people who are looking to change careers, and businesses. I work with a lot of businesses. I've worked with a lot of businesses in Waterville and Augusta. And where DEI comes in, and I didn't realize it until I was doing it, was that going into these businesses, people are looking for employees, right? We're all hearing, you know, everywhere is struggling. And I'm like, we've got new people coming into the state. We call them new Mainers, which I often go, does that make me old Mainer? Which I don't really like that. So not to mention, I just have to throw this in here. Talk about bias. Try having my name right now. You know, like, that's a Karen. And whoever the manager is, we have a meeting after today. But again, that name has also saved me in a lot of ways because good old social media, we see people post things and I may not agree with it, but I'm not going to say anything because I'm a Karen. So I keep my mouth shut, which that saves me sometimes. So getting back to working with businesses, what I like to do, and I like to offer my services up, anybody who's in business, who are looking for employees, I will go into a business and I will sit down with an owner or whomever is the designee, and we'll kind of do a survey and kind of see what exactly are you looking for in people. And I take this as an opportunity to offer up some diversity, to offer up, what have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? I've been so fortunate to work with a lot of businesses, and I have to give a shout out to Maine General over there. They've been great. We've worked with our Augusta Adult Ed and getting new Mainers jobs at Maine General, and they have been stellar. What we do is we look and see what is the barrier to getting people employed. Is it their culture? Is it who they are? Do they just not understand? I mean, most of us out there who have looked for a job, it's a lengthy process, right? So you apply, you wait, you may make a few calls, you may get an interview. Then you may get a second, maybe a third, and it's a waiting game. It could take up to a month or two before you get employed, and how discouraging is that for people anyway? Imagine that you are somebody who's not originally from here or does not speak the language. So my role is to go in and meet with these companies or businesses and help them navigate the system. I work with many. I think, I don't know what my statistics are, and I've got to keep on track because my boss is here today, which is great. But we've had a lot of people in the last couple of months. I think that I've had roughly 10 people get hired, which were in February, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. So we go in, we do the assessment with the business, we talk about their needs, we talk about how creative can we be. I worked with a recent landscaping company who desperately needs employees, and they said, Karen, what are the barriers? And I said, for a lot of people in this area in Waterville, if it's not local, they need transportation. So this company said, you know what, Karen? What's the big deal? A couple of us guys have a van. Why don't we have a pickup spot? So it was just, how simple is that? To hire somebody who, comes with probably more skills than we know, and the language barrier prevents us from knowing their true, authentic self. But we have to give chances. So I can do that. Anybody needs somebody to come in and have help getting employees, I will do that. I also work with, again, I said people who are underemployed or are new to this country. And what that looks like is I sit down with them. Sometimes it's lengthy. Sometimes it's really difficult because we're using our translators and doing an application or trying to help them interview. Can you imagine? They speak 5 languages. I speak 1. And it's really difficult for a lot of them to navigate the hiring process. Most of them really want to work, and they want to show that they can work. And so I've been on interviews with some of my new Mainers. I've been on interviews with some people who are just looking for a job, who are scared. I don't know how to fill out. It's been 20 years since I've done a resume. What do I need? They tell me I need only 1 page. I don't want to look foolish. How do I interview? And employers have said, Karen, come on along with them. And we've actually sat there in the interview. So talking about DEI again, bias, diversity, all of that stuff can be a positive thing because it makes us evolve, and one of my colleagues the other day put a stapler in front of me. I said, how do I talk about this? How do I talk about this? He put the stapler in front of me and goes, Karen, what do you see? I'm like, a stapler. He goes, but you only see one side of it, right? And I said, yeah. He said, I see the other side, but can you imagine if we had a bunch of diverse people, we would see the whole stapler. And I know that's silly, but it really hit home with me. I was like, yeah, we do. People coming together bring great things. I mean, they bring ideas. They refresh the business. They may have ways of doing things better. So, and I too don't have a PowerPoint today, and I'm giggling in my head because in the military I learned death by PowerPoint, never do it. So I've got my little notes here and there. So, so I think for businesses and people looking for DEI, I think communication is key. allowing people to be their authentic self, learning that we all don't think the same, and that's what makes it great. And being able to sit back and saying, okay, I don't agree with you. Let's talk about this, instead of coming up with a judgment. Y'all might think I'm a Karen by the time I leave here, but maybe some of you don't, so it's a win-win, right? If you give people cause, they will meet that. If you set expectations, people will meet that. And again, thank you. I'm so humbled to be here, and I appreciate this. And I'm glad I'm in the middle, so, you'll have time. But again, if anybody needs assistance or help, I've got business cards. I'm happy to help businesses and people find employment, because there's some great jobs out there, and there's some great people looking for jobs. And thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's try it again. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Biffle.
I do that for a reason, because I do that with all my students. Because I think it's important that you greet people who greet you. I think that's where it starts. And it's challenging for us to do those things sometimes, because we're all steeped in so many different traditions. I'm honored to be here with my very dear friend now, Karen. I'm in good company, because I too am PowerPoint challenged this morning. But as a teacher, I learned a long time ago, you always have a backup plan. So at your tables, there are some sheets, and I'd like everybody to pick up a sheet and share if you have to share. When I was asked to do this, and it was contextualized in part 2, I was trying to figure out, how should I do this? How should I approach this? So not necessarily anything else, but this is just how I think. These are thoughts and ideas collected over a long period of time. Yes, it's 2024, but I would have thought 2024 we wouldn't be having this conversation. I would have thought we would have emerged and gone beyond the obvious. But sometimes I also reflect with my students, and I remind them, never make assumptions. We can't assume because it's 2024 we don't have issues, challenges, problems, conflicts, etc., etc. Dare I say, sometimes I wake up and I wonder if history is repeating itself. I'm old enough to remember what this was like in many different generational situations, many locations around the world, etc., etc. But I'm still doing my thing. I'm still a teacher. Originally I was going to be an architect. I was told that I couldn't be an architect because architects didn't look like me. Tough when you're 17 years old and somebody just shoots your dream down. So as my grandfather used to tell me, don't get mad, get even. So I got my education. I got even. And I think that that's part of the message this morning, is you have to continually educate yourself as to what these issues are. You have to continue to be a lifelong learner. You have to continue to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. But I like what James Bowman said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. And I think we have to recognize that. So again, part of my comments this morning really are directed toward thoughts in creating a more diverse and inclusive workspace, important questions and ideas. Because that's what I do. I share these things with my students. I teach 7 classes at Thomas College. That's 3 more than most of my colleagues around the world teach. I share these thoughts and ideas with all my students in terms of every class I teach. I teach history, I teach science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. I teach cultural anthropology, I teach archaeology. Oh yeah, and I teach education classes too. Oh, but they're all education classes. Isn't that interesting? So a few thoughts in making things more diverse, and Ella and Karen certainly have articulated a number of the things that I'm sharing with you, and but I'll just go through a few of these and so that we can begin a dialogue and a conversation. How do you ensure DEI in the workplace? Work to highlight and remove bias. That's almost a lifelong mission in many organizations. You have to continually work at it. You have to address it. You have to create situations where people can talk about it. And talk about it without fear of retaliation, humiliation, and all the other things that happen to them. Recognize awareness, cultural and religious holidays. We have always been a diverse society, but we don't recognize sometimes that diversity. I was struck by the fact when I first came to Maine, somebody said Maine isn't very diverse. And yet I had students with French last names, I had students with German last names, I had students with Scotch last names, Welsh, Portuguese, Italian, African American, and somebody was telling me, well, Maine's not very diverse. Maybe y'all don't talk about it. Maybe you're fearful of bringing those things up. And a lot of you that are older, you understand what I'm talking about. You have to deal with these things and deal with them in important ways. But it's beyond just awareness, cultural, and religious holidays. It's beyond just food and dress. You have to embrace these ideas and talk about them with a depth and breadth of understanding and knowledge so that we gain deeper meanings and deeper conversations. We're dealing with a generation right now that is curious, to say the least. And curious because of what they don't know. And COVID didn't have a whole lot to do with that. We throw COVID under the bus, but these are students that had these issues and problems before COVID even hit. Think about that for a minute. As was brought up, and Karen talked about it, diversity and inclusive training for everyone, all employees. Everybody does it. It doesn't matter what your job title is. It doesn't matter what your salary is. Everybody needs to be part of the discussion. Otherwise, what's the point? If I feel left out, then I'm going to have lots of other opinions that are not so positive, shall we say. Have clear diversity and inclusivity policies. I think that speaks for itself. Be very clear. I see mission statements that go on for days. You don't need a day-long mission statement. A simple paragraph of 3 sentences can accomplish a lot more. Vision statements that are realistic. But you can't make assumptions because some people don't know what vision and mission are. So you have to work at that. You have to talk about that. What is that? What is my purpose? What is my role in terms of doing that? Ensure equal pay for equal work. I think we all understand that, although it's not equal. Just having a college degree does not make you learned. Most of the people I know that are incredibly smart and talented and intelligent didn't go to school. But they have a sensibility and a sense of common purpose that they understand equal pay for equal work. Write inclusive job ads. I do a lot of work behind the scenes, and even my colleagues at Thomas don't know I do this. And I'm asked to look at job ads and things like that, and sometimes they don't say anything. They don't talk about the real skills that are needed. They talk around the skills. Oh, they do the affirmative action EEO piece because everybody does that. But do you walk the walk and talk the talk? Many corporations, companies, institutions, other places, they don't. Because you don't go back to it. You don't reflect upon it. You don't discuss it. So those are important. How do you keep it alive? Ongoing discussions and listening sessions such as this. We need to do more of this, ladies and gentlemen, not less. I'm honored to be back for part 2. And as I was driving over here, I wondered, is there going to be a part 3? Conduct and respond to surveys. I think surveys, and be those written or tech or however you want to do it, is important. But you have to respond to them. Don't just do it because you're checking off the box. And that's what happens with DEI, like with so many things. It's just box checking. did this, did this, did this. It doesn't mean you did anything if you don't go back and respond to it. You have to be intentional and have a sense of intentionality. How do you embed it in the workplace, implement successful strategy? You need to know about current status of your workplace or your workforce. It's constantly changing. Constantly changing. You need to be up to date. I know many places and spaces are still operating as if it's 1960, 1970. No one has a corner on the market on that. I think most businesses, institutions, organizations, etc., are just trying to figure out what to do. Karen did something, and I think it's important, and I know she does a lot of things too. These are two incredible resources. If you don't take advantage of them, then shame on you. Bring them in. Have them talk to your organization. Talk to your people about what's going on. Invite me now and then. Yeah, I'm a former elementary middle school teacher, but that's okay. I've seen it all. Keep track of your diversity initiatives. Oftentimes we don't do that. You do really well prepared, well organized kinds of things, but you never talk about it. I talk to organizations about the importance of marketing what you do. Why just keep it in-house? Talk about it outside. And I've noticed that there's many organizations and other things that have done really good jobs in that regard. Showcase your community, business, education, healthcare, first responder, and military veteran collaborations. That list can be ongoing in terms of that. That's just something that I thought about in terms of the groups that I work with. Showcase that. Who are you working with? Who are your collaborations with? What does collaboration mean? What does partnership mean? What is the depth and breadth of collaboration and partnership? Is it just putting your name or your logo or something on the back of something and just indicate that, oh yeah, we do that? What does that mean though? How does that inform your organization? How does that inform the partnership? How does that inform the community? How does that inform society? Acknowledge and avoid recruiting bias. Sometimes we do that. We all have biases and things like that. I understand that trying to recruit people, to Maine sometimes is something of a challenge. I'm not going to go through all the challenges in terms of that because most of you know what the challenges are. It's not just salary. It's livable, affordable housing. It's community kinds of things that resonate with who you are and where you come from. That's everything from hair salons to grocery stores to businesses, et cetera, et cetera. I think Karen said something that was really critically important. We have groups of people that come here whose cultural backgrounds are different. Oh, by the way, they speak 4 or 5 languages. How many languages do you speak? We're still talking about, those kinds of literacy efforts in terms of bilingualism, multilingualism, as if it's a good idea. I'm working with students and I have to talk with them about the realities of going out into a global world where having a second and third language is a matter of purpose, identity, knowledge, understanding, application. It's not just something that most of us, or most of you did when we went to school and we took Spanish for 4 years, and yet we still can't speak Spanish. Except during Cinco de Mayo, and we got that wrong anyway. It's not about tequila shots, it's about the Battle of Puebla. Go to Mexico, it's a whole different phenomenon. Champion mentorship programs. If you're mentoring people and mentoring students and ideas and things like that, talk about that. In prominent and high-level executive positions, as well as organizations and departments, that's where DEI needs to be. It's not just up on top. It's in the middle and it's on the bottom too. It's 360 degrees. It's not 180. It's not 45. And then finally, just the whole idea of the 6 C's for inclusive leadership. And I think, I picked this up from Al. The whole idea of communication, critically important. You got to be able to talk with people and talk to people, not talk at people. Collaboration, I've talked a little bit about in terms of that, critically important. If you don't know how to collaborate, ask somebody how to do it. Creative problem solving, I do a lot with that with my students. Creative problem solving, innovativeness, problem solving, those kinds of things. Because their world is full of that. Think for a moment that many of the students that are in school today, be they in college or high school or elementary school or early childhood, they may have anywhere from 10 to 13 jobs in their career, of which 10 have not even been created yet. Think about that for a minute. What kind of world are we setting up? You've got to have commitment. You most definitely have to have courage. Been in this business a long time. My friends keep saying, when are you going to get out of that and get a real job? I said, when you get a real mind, I'll get a real job. Sometimes you have to push back. It's not about making friends and influencing people. Sometimes you have to step up because you have to be the leaders. And then last and certainly not least, you have to have courage and you have to have cultural competence. You should be versed in terms of what's out there, versed in terms of what works and what doesn't work. Yes, I'm troubled by book bans. I'm troubled by, just the bullying that still occurs. I'm troubled by the fact that we're still looked at as a country in terms of being leaders in so many things, but we have so many inherent contradictions. Don't think that people don't talk about that. Some of you have traveled. I go places and spaces and people go, what's wrong with you Americans? You have so much. You have so many things, but yet at the same time you're missing out. And I pose those things to my students, and I pose that to you this morning. If you need help, support, and assistance, look around this room in terms of the resources that are in this room. Get over your sense of fear. Get over your sense of you don't know how to do something. If you don't know how to do something, ask questions. Learn. So thank you for inviting me back to chapter 2.
First and foremost, thank you, all three of you. It's been really wonderful. Ella, I can't believe that you had a PowerPoint and went up and did such a great presentation without it. That would have been a much bigger hurdle for me to get over. So really wonderful. The questions that I had are for you, Ella. Thinking about your journey, I was curious from a workplace perspective, what did you need in the workplace to encourage you to be who you are sooner? And then as a secondary question, what triggered you to be who you are when you decided to make that transition, when you decided to have that conversation? Like, I'm just curious what you need, what would have encouraged you to be your true self, and then what finally got you to that point, as long as it's not too personal to share.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. I can't tell if it's off or on. Well, thank you very much. Those are great questions. I don't think there's anything that could have encouraged me to come out sooner than I did in my workspace. I don't care what type of workspace I was working in, I would have come out when the time was right. I had lived my life for 61 years as the wrong person. And it took that long for me to develop the courage to actually step forward and raise my hand and join the ranks of other transgender people. It was almost like a switch had flipped in me. And I think what it was the fact that I understood that I had less time in front of me than I had behind me, and I needed so badly to understand what it felt like to be whole, to bring my inside and outside together. And I think that's the reason why there's so many of us that attempt suicide or do suicide, because it's such a struggle. It's by far, I can't even put words on how difficult it is to make that decision. Thank you.
Hi. I have two questions. Ella, you mentioned, thank you all for talking, by the way. That was really great. You mentioned the Kennebec Valley Diversity Coalition. Could you talk about what that is and just a little bit more about that?
Right. Well, it's actually what that was, because we have lost our facilitator again, and we're on kind of a pause period right at the moment. What that was a group of us through Mid-Maine Chamber had got together, and we wanted to promote our region as an accepting location for people to live regardless of who we are. And for a base, what we decided to do is we drafted up a diversity resolution, and we wanted our municipalities in this immediate region to sign on to this diversity resolution, because when you have a municipality that has a resolution, it's a concept, it's a philosophy, it's a law. Okay, this is what we are. We believe in diversity. And what we ended up accomplishing is the town of Oakland, the town of Fairfield, the town of Winslow, and the town of Waterville all adopted that resolution. We made a united statement that we accept people for who they are.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you. And then my other question was nuts and bolts as far as like an organization is concerned, and resources dedicated to this work, this, kind of, looking back at policy, creating policy, the resources, trainings. What should people be looking at as far as budgeting for this work to happen in their organizations or their businesses?
And who's that question directed to?
Oh, that's for all, any or all of you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think part of the discussion. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Flip the switch. I think part of what you have to do is you have to have, and dare I say the transparency word because I think it's overused or underutilized, is look at your budgets and see where you can plug things in. Oftentimes the challenge in doing this work is people think you have to have separate budgets to do things. I think the goal sometimes is integrating budget throughout your system, throughout your organization, so that it's not just a standalone kind of thing. I realize budgets are tricky. I mean, I like, what Elle said about the Mid-Maine Diversity Coalition. I think that's something that you all need to become more a part of, and I'll say this publicly, and I'll probably regret it as I'm driving away. I'd like to be part of that. Because there are things that happen that I don't know. And I didn't know about that. There are resources that are there in terms of ideas that you can do. I'll share something that I thought was interesting. I don't know how many of you saw this. This appeared outside my door last year. And it's a calendar basically on diversity, and it's interviews with a whole series of other people. And then on the back, of course, the organizations that participated in development or helped fund this. This is something you can do. And what I did is I took this and I put it in our copy room. Very intentional, so that people could see it. So I think that, there's a collective wisdom in terms of how you go about it, but it's sitting down and looking at your budgets and simply saying, how does DEI overlay in terms of these particular initiatives, programs, activities, etc., so that it doesn't become standalone, isolated, and then suddenly it disappears. Not everything costs money, but intentionality and purpose go a long way.
Thank Thank you. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions, but I do have some gifts for our presenters, some closing remarks, and the drawings.
Thank you.